Welcome to a new episode of the Mentor Spotlight series, a live conversation to explore the role of mentorship in developing the professional identity of physicians. I'm your host, Javier de la Maza. I'm a pediatric emergency doctor and I serve as the executive director of Ars Medica. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to nurturing the personal and professional growth of medical students, residents, and physicians. And I'm really excited because tonight we have a very special guest, Dr. Shapir Rosenberg. Shapir is a palliative care physician and psychiatrist who is passionate about teaching and the medical humanities. Shapir was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and graduated with a concentration in philosophy from the University of Pennsylvania. He also completed residency in psychiatry at the University of Maryland Medical Center, where he was inducted into the Gold Humanism Society. And Shapir recently completed his fellowship in hospice and palliative medicine at the University of South Florida and looks forward to moving to New York for a new job providing end-of-life care. So welcome, Shapir. We are delighted to have you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself and also tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in medicine?
In the interest of time, I'll give a direct answer to the second part, which is what inspired the career in medicine. It would be my mother's death from breast cancer when I was 12 and she was 48. And unbeknownst to me at the time, that really inspired my interest in doctoring and most certainly my interest in end-of-life care.
So, okay. And how did that experience? So I imagine that you had the experience of being the caregiver for your mom, and maybe being exposed to doctor appointments and hospitals. But can you maybe tell me a little bit more about how did you navigate that experience, and then how that led you to pursue a career in medicine?
Sure. As someone later on in my life put it to me, I was living with a dying person, and I think I came to see how a diagnosis, in particular a cancer diagnosis, and in particular a terminal cancer diagnosis, can affect a person, namely her, can affect so not only an individual, but their immediate circles and expanding circles, and certainly a parent, and certainly a child, and in my case, an only parent and an only child, and all of the treatments and the surgery and the hospitalizations and the doctor's visits and the transformation of a person, what it was to have had some sense of my mom before, and then to, again, I was too little I was just 11 and 12, but to fully appreciate it, but to see how things can change, how a life can change, how a person can evolve through a devastating illness, and then of course the repercussions of a profound loss like that in my life. So maybe I would have had the interest in being a doctor before she got sick and before she died, it would have been a very abstract notion. I recall also as a little boy wanting to be a truck driver. But certainly with her death, I was interested in medicine, although I had no particular call to any field within medicine. I wasn't interested in a particular organ system or a body part. I wasn't interested per se in livers or knees or noses. I was interested in whole people and their suffering and how they cope, and in particular how they cope facing often tragic circumstances, and both them and loved ones surrounding them. And so it was a very long, circuitous route to medicine, with a number of false starts, which hopefully the course of tonight's talk, talking about mentors, really helped me get back on a track that I wanted to pursue but struggled to for a time. And so through a very tortuous path, came to medicine, although the seeds were planted when I was very little.
Yeah. Yeah, so you also, so you recently finished your fellowship in palliative medicine, but you mentioned that this is not something that you wanted to pursue when you started medical school. At what point in your journey, and if there were any insights that maybe directed you towards that particular field?
Sure. Well, I mean, we haven't yet brought up the notion of a mentor, but maybe, with your permission, I would introduce it here, because it was with the aid of a mentor that I came to see that medicine was indeed my calling, if there was ever any question, and hospice and palliative medicine in particular. But it was another issue to see that to fruition, to become unstuck in certain ways, to cope with prior losses, to see a way forward, to see someone who was being the kind of doctor that I wanted to be, or that I aspired to be in certain ways, to make it real and to enable me to do it. And so, no, it was not until we'll say my second attempt at medical school that I by then did have some sense that end-of-life care might be a realm where I would not only fit in, but bring a unique set of strengths and personal experiences to bear. Well, I'm happy to share the sort of particular story, if you're interested, of how I met that person, and frankly, how it led me to.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to hear more about that mentor, and how you came to meet each other.
Yeah. So this was 14 years ago now. I was in Israel, being somewhat adrift and lost, and starting medical school again at the Technion in Haifa, in the north of Israel. And the story, which I've yet to write about anywhere, but I intend to, is that the class of about 30 were going on a field trip that day. And one bus, the class was split, and one bus was supposed to go to hear a talk at a chocolate factory in northern Israel about occupational medicine. And I was assigned to that bus. The other bus I got wind of was going to hear a talk at a hospice, a freestanding hospice in the north of Israel in the Galilee. And I jumped out of the chocolate bus and went into the hospice bus. And there heard a talk. His name is Dr. Jim Shalom. I heard a talk by Dr. Shalom, who was then the medical director, and some members of his team. I believe there was a music therapist there and an art therapist and another physician. And they spoke about things that I didn't know were, frankly, spoken about in medicine, or were within the sphere of what a doctor does, namely caring for dying people, what hospice looks like, what home hospice is, what a music therapist provides, what an art therapist provides, how to care not only for the physical but emotional needs of a dying person and their loved ones. And it was a profound day in my life. And at the end of that talk, Dr. Shalom offered if anyone had any questions. He handed out his phone number, his email address, and I reached out to him that night. And maybe more importantly, he reached back, and thus began a relationship that endures to this day, whereby he has really seen me through, if you will, the repeat start at medical school all the way through residency and fellowship, and now practice. And so.
That's beautiful. And I love that you still, you're still in touch with your mentor. And so it's been 14 years now since you first met.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what do you think are what are the things that make an ideal mentor, a good mentor? What are some of the characteristics of that relationship? Maybe you can talk based on your experience and the relationship you have with Dr. Shalom. Yeah, if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, that would be great.
Sure. I think some of the characteristics that I'll name, and just sort of two come to mind, they certainly apply to him. They apply to all the mentors I've had in my life, which perhaps in my unique case go way back. Which maybe I'll just say one more word about, and then I'll answer your question about the characteristics. I think being an only child, losing the only parent who was in my life, I was always seeking mentors. So mentor for me is a very broad term that encompasses not simply a person to guide another with respect to career choice or career pursuits, but really gets to fundamental questions, and more importantly, modeling of what it means to be a person, how to be, and then of course with more narrow question about how to be how to be a medical student, how to be a doctor, how to be a psychiatrist, how to be a palliative physician. So for me, from an early age, many mentors have exhibited the qualities that I'll name two that come to mind, and that is one, simply caring. Caring, in my case, about me. More important than caring about my career or my academic pursuits, simply caring about me as a person. My teachers, all through, going back to elementary school and middle school and high school, I had numerous mentors and teachers who were mentors who cared. And then certainly in medical training, including Dr. Shalom, individuals who cared. By the way, I should add that I think the same qualities that make for a good doctor make for good mentors. And so caring would be one. And arguably, by the way, caring without even fully knowing who a person is, simply caring about a person while or in the course of coming to know them, and finding things to care about them, and to care about them, and ways to care for them. And the second characteristic that comes to mind is, I think, a capacity to feel, and to feel deeply. In particular, in the world of medicine, so much is, well, there's so much to feel because so much is tragic. Maybe other than delivering a healthy baby, we're in the realm of illness and loss of, loss of ability, and loss of life in the extreme, and to have doctors, to have mentors who can feel, who can feel that the tragedy and the tragic in another, in what they're going through, is high on my list of
Qualities.
Qualities that make good mentors and doctors.
Yeah. And I really appreciate how you explain the influence and the of a mentorship relationship, and how there is this modeling happening, and how behaviors, attitudes, beliefs are modeled through this relationship, and how important that is to help an individual figure out what it means to be human, and what it means to be a doctor. So thank you, because of that. I think that's very enlightening, and I also appreciate how you put on the list, caring and being able to feel, to connect with that other person. I'm curious to know if there are mentors outside medicine that have had an impact in you as a person and in you as a physician. I'm thinking of, even patients sometimes can be mentors for doctors. So I don't know. Do you have any examples or thoughts about that?
Yeah, I like the question. I mean, first of all, it's a credit to your question, because it brings to mind the notion that a mentor need not be one's senior, however defined, whether by age or by rank or by even per se experience with whatever one is grappling with. It can be, a mentor can be peer, certainly can be patient as well, or students. How we learn from all of those around us in certain dimensions of our life. Oh gosh. Well, it's funny. In anticipation of tonight's talk, I made a short list of some mentors that came to my mind over the course of my life, not only in medicine, but outside. And there are a number of teachers on the list. Even some mentors who wouldn't necessarily know they were mentors of mine. You'd maybe call them more far away mentors who I sort of imagine to be, rightly or wrongly, but imagine to be a certain kind of person, and that I aspire to be as well. To directly answer your question, it's interesting. What comes to mind would be some of the patients in, or all of the patients in a cancer therapy group that I started and ran when I was a psychiatry resident in Baltimore. It really moved me and surprised me and was flattering to me that they would come each week to our group therapy sessions, looking to me, arguably, at least in terms of years of experience, inexperienced young doctor who had never before ran or conducted a cancer therapy group. But they would come every week, and I would come there too. And I don't know if they know, if they knew that, or if they know now, upon reflection, that they were mentoring me in what it meant to care for others, often in grave circumstances, and sometimes with poor prognoses, and horrific diagnoses. How to be with them, how to give to them, to offer to them, in very unspoken ways. They mentored me what it meant to, what they needed, how to care for them. And they showed me, I think, simply by being themselves and by coming and by trusting me and having some sense, I presume, I would hope that I really cared for them, and perhaps some appreciation also that I felt for them and with them. And that with those ingredients alone, a relationship could be, in the case of group therapy, it's multidimensional relationships, but that those relationships could take hold and grow and solidify. And so they would be an example. I like your question, because I hadn't frankly thought about it this way, of individuals, patients in particular, who have mentored me. And in this case, not only as group therapist and psychiatrist and palliative doc, but simply as a person, as a human.
Was there any particular patient that, perhaps had a greater impact in your own process and in your life?
Mm. Gosh, I mean, I've had many patients come to mind with your question. And in that way, I hold patients in my mind and in my heart long after I've seen them or last seen them, and even if, even or especially if they're deceased. Oh gosh, the list would be long, Javier. I don't know that we have enough time to to delve into it. Interestingly, as I think about it, what most of them have in common would be, again, whether as in that group setting or simply as individuals, they were often facing terminal illness or very serious illness, often with a humor, often with a perspective, even with an appreciation of absurdity, of irony, that I think helps us all cope with the tragedies and travails of life. And arguably, despite numerous differences in race and religion, in gender, and those things simply fell away, and there's simply a pureness to the purity to the connection and the relationship, and in this case, the mentorship that emerged.
Yeah. So you mentioned the importance of caring and having the ability to feel, to connect with another person. What are some other qualities that, in your opinion, make up a good doctor?
in addition to caring and in addition to feeling, I think a responsiveness, and a responsiveness on the terms of the other person, not on one's own terms. So an availability, and a responding to when needed, and often far outside the bounds of office hours, and I think that's important. I think, and a number of examples of this come to mind. The capacity to care even when, well, I suppose it's an extension of caring, but to care even when one could stop, when one's professional duty would allow them to stop and to come to a certain point and not further, to go beyond and to simply go above and beyond. I think a capacity to teach, plain and simple. I don't know that a good doctor cannot be a good teacher, in whatever mode that teaching takes place, whether it's in conversation or at a blackboard, if there are blackboards anymore. But to teach would also be, I think, an essential ingredient of doctoring.
And do you see yourself as a mentor of others? You mentioned that you are currently involved in teaching undergrad medical students. What are some of the things that you try to convey and teach to your students and maybe people that you are mentoring?
Yeah. So I do try to be a mentor, and I try to be very conscious that in all of my encounters with students in particular, that's a mentoring opportunity, that's a modeling opportunity. So I try to be available. I'm actually talking to you from the class, well, the standardized patient exam room, where during the day I do some work, and on the whiteboard next to me is nothing but my email address and my phone number, and I put that there even before I've met the students, so that when they come in from our very first encounter, they have a way to reach me, and one, to reach me, two, to show that I do care and that I'm available to them and interested in them and in their learning and their growth. And I even want it up here when they come in, so that they see that's first and foremost on my mind, is that they have a way to reach, that they don't have to ask for it, that I'm offering of that. So yes, I try to mentor others. Opportunities for mentorship are vast, and sometimes, as well, it would be another story that we likely won't have time for, but as was the case with some patients and family of patients of mine, one can mentor as doctor, not because of who one is, but not because of one's skills as a doctor, but simply because of who one is as a person. And it happened to have been the doctor-patient relationship that facilitated the relationship, and that sort of enabled and established the relationship in the first place. But experiences that I've had that connect with others, and that those other people take an interest in me for.
Yeah, no, I think that's so I really love this very subtle gesture of putting your email, your phone number to, just communicate that you are, available for your student, that you are invested in their growth and their learning. And I also appreciate this idea of bringing your entire self into the patient encounter, and how our lived experiences outside medicine are also, add value to that relationship. So thank you very much for your, sharing your stories, your experience, for being here with us today, Shapir. This was a wonderful conversation. And well, I just want to remind our audience that this event was brought to you by Ars Medica. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to nurturing the personal growth of medical students, residents, and physicians. And we accomplish this by building an online community and developing learning experiences that integrate the arts and humanities. If you want to join our community or learn more about our work, you can go into our website. That's ars-medica.org, ars-medica.org, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So thank you, Shapir, and good night.